Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Arrow webinar on VMware VCPP rental program and covering the program essentials. My name is Thijs, and I'm a technical business developer with Arrow ECS Denmark, and I'm gonna take you through a lot of content today. So I hope you're coffeed up and ready, because we have a lot of different things and topics to cover. So just before we get started here, there's some housekeeping. So just to remind you that you attended the session live. So this is your opportunity to ask the question and get answer to all your questions. So don't be shy, put it in the Q&A and we'll cover them as we go along. Also, you can raise your hand, and I think possibly you can unmute yourself and ask the question live, or at least raise your hand and we can unmute you. So if there's something that you don't understand, just write it in the Q&A and we'll pick up the question along the way. So the agenda for today, it's a little constructed. I think there's a lot for everybody. So some of you have been with the program for quite some time now, so possibly there's a lot of things that you do know, but it's going to cover the basics, and we're going to go through the reporting and consumption, staying in compliance, and also in the end there will be a section with a lot of helpful materials and links to sites that have a lot of contents on them. So it's a form of self-help guide for you to consume. If you've opted in to receiving materials, you will get a link to the recording of this presentation, and you'll also receive a PDF file with the slides for today, including all the links in the slides. So you can just open the PDF and click to the subject that you want to know more about. First, an announcement. I know it's a far future, but still next year there will be VMworld. So hopefully this will be a physical event, as it has been back in the post or pre-COVID days. So let's get the fingers crossed and hope for a physical event. Anyway, if it's online, well, possibly the date will shift, but save the date in the calendar for November for Europe at least. So let's go through the rental program, the VMware Cloud Provider program. What is it? It is, as I said, a rental license program. So contrary to the perpetual or subscription licensing, this is a pay-as-you-go rental program, and it will also allow you to extend the EULA to actually allow for hosting of third parties. So this is very important. So also the reason why you cannot run hosting on a normal perpetual license, you need to get into this program if you are hosting third parties, and third parties being everything that's outside your own business or a subsidiary. So if you have a subsidiary that's associated with your own company, then you can run perpetual. Otherwise, you need to have this program. There's two routes to market in the cloud provider space for VMware. So the topic we are going to cover today is the license rental program. But as you can see on the slide, there's also a managed service provider route. So basically, this is all the VMware products that have been software as a service fied in some way. So it's hosted on VMware Cloud. So basically, it's easy consumable, but it's maintained and managed by VMware. So this is the MSP route. So what we're looking at here is the cloud provider route, which is the normal products you have, but made available for cloud providers to install in their own data center or in a hyperscaler data center, or even extend out to the on-premise of a customer. A quick glance here. This is taken directly from the program guide. So this is just for your reference. I put it in the slide deck here. This is the extended EULA rights that you actually get where it's mentioned, what is allowed within this program and how does your rights extend compared to the traditional EULA. I do not expect you to read through this. Also, you actually have a right for doing white label services. So if you're a cloud provider that wants to provide this service to, reseller or stuff like that, that wants to resell that service to an end customer, you're actually allowed to do that within the white label model for VCPP. So take a look at the slide if you get the handout here, or go to the program guide, and I'll give you a link later on how to find all these information, but just for your reference. Included in this rental program is some internal use benefits. It's important here to note that there's some limitations, even if you're actually paying for internal use, which is obligation in this program. So if you're a hosted IT service provider or cloud provider, and you're using your own services for your internal stuff, then be aware this is only available from advanced partner level and up. And there's some stipulation about it's a 10% of the monthly consumption, or 100 points, whichever is greater. Also, there's some stipulation about, or limitation about, the cloud demonstration environment. So if you're building a test environment for your future customers to try out your services, there's also some limitations there. And there's a lot of small prints, but it basically just tells you that you need to pay for the services and you have these limitations. So a lot of new things are happening in the program, a lot of changes. This is mainly to the product usage guide, and if you don't know what that is, I'll cover that in just a second. But this is taken directly from this document, where they keep all the information about different products and how they're calculated and stuff like that. Most important is the level of usage meter version you have to be on, as well as the VUI, which is the usage insight. VMware usage insight is now a requirement since version 4 of usage meter. So this has now been written into the program usage guide. So just be aware, and we'll cover all the versions and stuff like that in a couple of slides. Also, we have the Cloud Director availability. That is some content related to the old version 2 has been removed. The advanced load balancer, this is called known as the AV load balancer feature. That had been a one-off license request thing. Then it became like a on-demand licensing or your self-service kind of thing. Now it's reverting back to the one-off, so you need to go through an ordering process to get the license for the advanced load balancer. But this is more like an administrative thing more than anything else. So an important change here for the vSAN. So vSAN Enterprise. So in the program guide, it was stipulated that you had like the vSAN, you had the standard, and you had the advanced. Then you had the standard with enterprise, and then you had the advanced with enterprise. This has been greatly simplified now. So you only have the standard, advanced, and then the enterprise version. So no plus enterprise or anything like that. And again, looking at the vSAN component, the standard is covering the normal mirror, a lot of basic features and mirror capabilities. So if you want to have like RAID 5, 6 erasure coding, you need to go up to vSAN Advanced. And if you have requirements for doing encryption or stretch cluster, stuff like that, then you would opt in for the vSAN Enterprise. Then Cloud Director for VCF is covered, and just update to content as it says. There's no changes or anything there. And the last thing being included in the program, and that's just recently been added, is the Tanzu Basic. Obviously, there was a big announcement at VMworld as well that they're going to do a community edition for Tanzu. There'll be some basic stuff in the perpetual license side. So obviously that's been pushed into the cloud provider space as well. So if you are a cloud provider that already had Tanzu in there and you were reporting separately from that, the only change for you would actually be that, you know, the price is now 0 for that component instead of the price that you have been paid in points. And also when you're renewing, when the contract expires, you know, it won't be renewed. It would just go in as a part of the Flex Core standard. So yeah, a new component in there. Updates in the program usage guide for NSX data center. So just for the future comparison, there are some changes there. So that's been updated. And then just a general reminder, if you were reporting on the old bundles, so the bundle called standard with management or advanced with network and management, then you were under price protection when looking at the new Flex Core model that would end in May 2022. So just be aware if you're reporting on these bundles that the price protection will be ending in May 2022 and the price will be converted into the Flex model price. So so just have a note of that. So the Flex Core, this is the centerpiece of the program. What is it? Well, it's a collection of products, and it's how you get started in offering VMware cloud services as a cloud provider. It will consist of hosts, ESX, and vCenter server as well. You'll have some Cloud Director on top of that to make it multi-tenant, as offering for login side to have log collection. You also have availability component, which is included there, so you can do migrations for free. So helping your customers move from their on-prem data center into your services. You'll have the NSX data center base services, so you can make virtual networking. That's also included. You have the chargeback component. So the component for actually doing billing queries or, you know, T-shirt size billing. It's a difficult word. So you can make some billing API and push the data back to your own system in the backend. Then obviously, as I mentioned, you have the vSphere Enterprise Plus the vCenter server, as well as the Tanzu Basic has now been included, all bundled in with production level support. Any other products that VMware is offering is in this space will be available as add-on products. So that is something that you purchase on a per point basis, or some of the product actually built on a per VM basis. So depending on how you're using it, you can choose the billing, but that's an additional add-on to the Flex Core. So always starting with the Flex Core in this program, and they have priced that at 7 points. Going into calculation in just one slide. And that's now. So Flex Core, again, it's a points-based program. So everything you consume in there is based in points. Points have a value, monetary value. So whichever contract you're on, that point will relate to some monetary value. When looking at how the points are calculated, they are being calculated from a per VM VRAM basis. So looking at the individual virtual machine and the VRAM that's allocated to the virtual machine, or if it's reserved to the virtual machine. So there's a multiplier depending on if it's reserved or allocated that you need to apply, and whichever calculation is greater would go into the final calculation. It's capping at 24. So if the calculation is greater than 24, the end result, it will cap at 24. And yes, then it's multiplied by the points per unit for the Flex Core. That was the 7 point I was referring to. Also important to know here that the way that it's being perceived by the usage meter is on a license key basis, and license keys are applied on a per host basis. So when, you know, building the environment, just make sure that, you know, you have separate hosts for separate duties. So if you have a mixed environment with some perpetual, the license keys reflected into the calculation would be on a per host basis. So everything that needs to run, for example, your internal systems on a perpetual license, that needs to be separated on one host, and preferably not in the same cluster at all, because we don't want to have failover issues or stuff like that. So for your hosting and rental business, make sure you have separate hosts in a separate cluster using these hosting license keys. Very important. So on the right-hand side, you can see a couple of examples on calculation. We have one virtual machine, number one. It's provisioned with 8 gigs of VRAM. 0% of the VRAM is reserved, which does trigger the multiplier of 1.5, so half. Half of 8 is 4, so that would then result in 4 units. That number has to be multiplied with the points per unit for the flex core, so that would be 4 times 7, which will result in the total points consumed for this virtual machine, and again result in the monetary value. For the example number 2 here, we have a 10 gig VRAM machine with 80% reserved. So doing 2 calculations on this one. So first is just to see which number is greatest. So a half times 10 is 5, and then we have the 80% reserved. So that is multiplier of 1 times 10 times 0.8, because it's 80%. That results in 8 units. So it's 8 we need to move forward with in the calculation, then multiplying it by 7 for the flex core and getting the end results there. So I hope it makes sense on how the calculation is done, but very important here, look at if the VRAM is reserved or not, and make the calculation on an individual per VM basis. Otherwise, you won't end up in a precise result. Moving forward for the product usage guide. So how to find it? It's located on Partner Connect, which is your entrance as a partner in the VMware ecosystem. So I usually just go in the top for the search bar, type in the product usage guide, and the first hit there would be the current usage guide. So important reminder here is that the usage guide is actually being published once every quarter, and it has been for quite some time actually. So not in the start and the beginning of every quarter, but pretty close to that. So maybe check in a month in the quarter, and there should be a new product usage guide. We'll try to advertise it to all our partners as well, but just know that there's one every quarter. So how does the product usage guide look? So when you open it up, there will be a lot of useful information about the program in general, and it changes from the last product usage guide. So it's easy to get an overview from the previous version of the usage guide. But if you dive into the usage guide, you'll see all the products that are available for consumption in the VCPP program. And here's an example. I've taken the Network Insight component, and you can see on the point value charge per, there's a standalone edition and there's a flex add-on edition here. So I was speaking about that earlier on the standalone. That is on a per VM calculation. So that's just 3 points per VM, regardless of how the VM is provisioned. So that's one way of measuring that consumption. Also, you have the flex model add-on. Flex model add-on is just a 0.75 points per gigabyte reserve RAM. So again, it's based on the same calculation we just went through, but just adding the 0.75 to the 7-point core. So basically, that's the calculation you need to do if applying the flex model add-on for the Network Insight component. All right, I hope it makes sense. Otherwise, raise your hand or type in a question. Then we have something called the product detection guide as well. So this is a support document. Actually, I think it's a product detection white paper, but let's see. So anyway, you write it in the search field on the Partner Connect, and you'll find a match. Then you can click on it. Yeah, it's a white paper. And then you can have a document that is in detail describing how usage meter, which is a metering component in VCPP, is perceiving consumption of a specific product. So this is a great document if you want to be sure that you are not, getting a higher consumption than expected. So depending on how the component is working and how you installed it in your environment, it's pretty useful information to know how usage meter is actually monitoring and looking at consumption in order to not, if you're only focused on having a part of your environment with this new component, maybe check the detection guide to make sure that it's not, being misread as the whole environment, right? So it's useful information here. Taking into just an example here, the vRealize Network Insight, as we went through the product usage guide, it's described here. This component maybe not so much in detail, but anyway, it still describes how usage meter is actually looking at billing and consumption for this particular component and how it's measured. So there could be a number of things triggering consumption. So that would all be described in the product detection white paper. Moving along to metering and how it's being done currently. So on number one, deploy products, you can see the products you have deployed in your data center. Then you have the usage meter appliance monitoring the consumption of all these products you have installed. The usage meter will upload information for automatic reporting to the Usage Insight portal, and the Usage Insight will process this raw data into the bundles and the SKUs, stuff like that. And every month, it would push the aggregated data into the commerce portal in a monthly billing order. So basically, that's kind of the flow of the metering and reporting. There are some changes, but I'm going to dive a little deeper in that in just a second. So speaking about all these portals here, so we're trying, or VMware is trying really to consolidate the number of portals, but there's a lot of things, moving parts in here. So I don't think we'll ever get really rid of them. Usage Insight on Commerce Portal. Maybe that's a little wrong, but anyway, the Commerce Portal and the features related to the Commerce Portal and what you can do. So basically on the Commerce Portal, you can register your usage meters. You can create sites as well. So you can append a usage meter to a specific site. So if you have multiple sites that you want to divide, then you can register them in the Commerce Portal. You can also opt in for automatic reporting, and I think most of the partners already been opted into the automatic reporting. There's also on the Commerce Portal where you actually approve the monthly consumption on the billing orders. So everything related to that is done in there. Then we have the Usage Insight on the Cloud Services Portal / the Cloud Partner Navigator. Yeah, so difficult word there, but anyway, it's a migration process for the two portals, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But what you can do on the Usage Insight portal is basically download the reports. You can look at timestamps. You can configure, if there's this per VM metering instead of going on per gigabyte VRAM, then you can change it in the Usage Insight. So Usage Insight is just, receiving raw data from the usage meter. So it makes sense that the configuration related to how the consumption should be metered is placed on the Usage Insight portal. So there's little or none to be done at the usage meter installation. Everything is done in the Usage Insight portal. Also, just entered into this Usage Insight is an invite to the Cloud Partner Navigator. So if you're still on the old portal, the Cloud Services portal, then you should be able to go in there, go into the Commerce Portal, request an invite into the Cloud Partner Navigator portal. And then, you should have access to the data in there. there's a lot of more features being introduced into the usage insight when accessing it through the Cloud Partner Navigator. All right, touching on usage meter itself. So usage meter is this component that you installed in your hosting environment, and it's mandatory. It's not optional, it's mandatory. Saying this because we have had some partners that were doing manual reporting in an Excel spreadsheet. This is not allowed. You need to install usage meter for metered products that are supported with usage meter. There is some products left still that only does like manual reporting, but you can find the way to report that in the product usage guide. So I previously had been more or less Horizon, and we're going to touch on that in just a second because changes are coming there. But Horizon has been like the manual reporting product, one of them. You were required to go into the console of Horizon and note the number on concurrent connections. You report this number, you reset the counter, but just before you do that, you screenshot. I mean, very manually screenshot it for reference. So if you were into a compliance check, you would need to produce a screenshot to support the current connection counter. A little difficult, but that's the way it is. But for everything else that is supported by usage meter, you must use usage meter. It's not an option. Current version is 4.4. Next version scheduled for release mid-December is 4.5. All versions prior to 4.3 is end of general support. So you cannot use them at all. Which leads me to a small poll. Launching it now. On your screen, you have a couple of questions there. So just to know, and for you to answer, if you're using usage meter and if you're using auto reporting. All right. So yep. So we have a couple that has not doing auto reporting. I would highly and very strongly recommend you to switch to auto reporting. There could be cases where it's not applicable. So if you're in an offline environment, if you're governed by some rules that you cannot have connectivity to the VMware servers or to the outside world, okay, you would do offline reporting. That's an option. I'm going to cover that in a slide too. So that's one reason for doing it. If that is not your reason, opt in for auto reporting. You still have the opportunity to change your numbers if something is wrong. I will touch that in the end of the webinar on how you would go about doing that. So auto reporting is not, final. It'll just push the numbers automatically into the usage insight for processing, and then it would move it to the order in the commerce portal, where you have the opportunity to change the numbers and approve the report or stuff like that. So my recommendation, just because it's much easier, is to go in and go into to auto reporting if you do not have some requirements that require you to report offline. And we have two that are not using usage meter. So I hope that's because it's not relevant for your work. But if you are a cloud provider in the VCPP program, you must use usage meter as mentioned. So please contact an Arrow representative following this webinar to get that installed. You're going to fail a compliance check if you're using VCPP but not using usage meter. All right. And as mentioned on this slide, auto reporting for older versions of usage meter 4.2 and earlier has stopped. So you would not be able to auto report from these old versions. That could also be a reason why you're not auto reporting, but then you need to upgrade because everything below 4.3 cannot be used anymore. All right. Moving right along, and thank you so much for answering. So installing usage meter, or actually not installing that yet, but looking at usage meter and which is valid. This is just taken from the Lifecycle page on VMware. It's an excellent place to look up information relating to all their products. Here I entered the usage meter, and you can see, what is the date for the general support? Is it out of technical guidance or not? And as you can see, for everything below 4.3, there's no technical guidance at all. So that's just simply not usable anymore. So you need to be for 3, for 4 going forward. For 5, mid-December, definitely recommend going to that version. And since if you are on a 4 version, you can do in-place upgrades. So and it's really painless. So it's very easy to do it. So if you're not on a 4 version, or at least a 4.4, do the in-place upgrade to a 4.4, then okay, next month, 2 weeks, you can upgrade to the 4.5 in place, very painless moving forward. If you were on 3.6.1, and there is apparently nobody on the call that are using 3.6.1 or earlier, but just to describe the difference in technology here, all the logic in the old version 3 was kept on the appliance. So every processing and stuff like that was done locally on the appliance. In the 4 version, as I told you, everything is being pushed into the usage inside for calculations and stuff like that. So where you had a requirement on the older versions to update the appliance to stay in compliant with the program, you still have to do that, obviously, but because of the calculation logic being placed locally, there was a even bigger requirement to actually be up to date there. On the 4 version, everything is pushed directly into the usage inside, and every logic that needs to be changed are changed as a software as a service solution by VMware. So also the big difference here is reports are going in hourly. So you can actually go to the usage inside and you can track your consumption during the month, because everything is uploaded there on a per hour basis. Looking at 4.5 released in a couple of weeks. So this is a feature comparison for the 3.6.1. So it's not only on par, but it's definitely surpassed the older version. So you can see there's metering for Tanzu Basic on 4.5. There's the Horizon as well going into that in 4.5, and there's some NSX as well being recognized in there. So basically, more or less what I just said. So NSX vSAN, some features being measured that are being added in there. Operations, now you can actually, so that's the removable auto discovery, so that you can do some better configurations in there, but also some group support. So you can actually now bundle groups with different editions of VR ops. So this is a really, really nice feature. As you may not want a full environment to be covered by the enterprise version. So if you have one customer that would require the enterprise version, but the rest is just on advanced, then you can do that in the license group support that is being added. Then we have the new thing that's Horizon, the new collector. And just to mention here, this is from Horizon version 7.9 and later. And also it does not support mixed environment. So you cannot do different Horizon versions, stuff like, or editions, stuff like that. And you have to be on version 7.9. So NSX support, vSAN support for desktop is coming on a later version for usage meter, but definitely it's something that's been requested for quite some time to have the metering for Horizon. Also, there's some changes for the appliance, sorry. So there's some network things, stuff like that, that is now exposed into the WAMI, the management interface of the appliance. You also have some, there's been some requests because everything is kind of encrypted and hashed when it's being sent from the usage meter appliance into the usage inside portal. Just to keep things, anonymous and GDPR kind of thing. But now it's possible to actually opt out of that, so you can get the names of the VMs and stuff like that into the Users Insight portal if you don't have these kind of requirements. Also, you can opt into redacted mode to obscure things even more. Touching on offline versus online versus offline metering here. Again, I would strongly recommend you to go automatic, but there can be some scenarios where you are required to do offline reporting. Just know that you need to do a manual task every month, and you need to do it within 48 hours. So quite a small time frame there. You need to export the data from the usage meter appliance, review the raw data. Yeah, I mean, if it's obscure, there's nothing really to review, but just making sure that you're delivering the right report for the right month. Then you go into the Usage Insight portal, upload the file, then data is being pushed as normal over to the commerce portal and into the billing order that needs to be submitted within 5 days, starting from the start of the month. So yes, it's possible for offline metering. Is it a little hassle? Yep, yeah, sure is. And there's room for errors in there, missing the 48-hour window you have to upload the data. So just a question here. Let's see. So the question here being, is switching from offline to online usage meter configuration, or does it require installing a new online usage meter? So it's a change. If I remember correctly, you are able to switch that into the usage meter. It does not require a new installation of the instance. So this is purely a configuration change in there. And there's a reference. I'll link to some pages on the web where you can actually find information in there. But yes, it shouldn't require a new installation at all. So it's just a switch. It's been significantly easier prior. Back in the days, switching to offline reporting, it required prior approval from VMware to actually do that. This is significantly easier, as you can do it like a self-service in there, going to offline. But switching from offline to online, it should be a configuration change. So upgrading usage meter, obviously, as every upgrade goes, you need to be aware, is it compatible? Going to the interop matrix on VMware side, you can go in, put in the product and see which vCenter server, because it's a vCenter server that the usage meter is talking to, which is supported in there. So again, for being on 4.4 or 4.3, you can go for the latest version. If you have a little older installation, you need to upgrade it, basically, because the 4.2 is not supported anymore. So you need to upgrade your vCenter server anyway. But check the interoperability matrix before you just deploy the new version to make sure everything is working together. And again, don't read the documentation mid-flight. Start with the documentation. It's a recipe for success. I know it's boring, but that's the way it is. So on upgrading usage meter, this is taken directly for the resource side for Cloud Provider. If you don't know it, it's VCPP.CLOUD. Go into Cloud Provider in the menu, and then you can click on the Cloud Provider metering. This site is changing. This is a recent screenshot, so this is the way to do it, but the site is changing every so often, so they might move the menus around. But again, Cloud Provider metering would provide you with the page for resources for the metering process. And as you can see, there's an guide for in-place upgrade from usage meter 4X to 4.3. That should apply for 4.4 as well, same process. Also usage meter 3.6.1 to 4.3 migration and how you do that. I know apparently nobody's using 3.6.1 on this call, but included this one just to make sure that you know when you are replacing the appliance, you need to go and run them in parallel. So you have the old appliance and the new appliance, run them in parallel, make sure the numbers that are coming out of the appliances are the same. Since you can configure these appliances different from each other, Maybe you forgot to include something, maybe you included too much, I don't know. Whatever the reason, you running them in parallel will actually allow you to identify issues with installing a new usage meter instance or misconfiguration. And you can set the instance to test instead of production. So for the new appliance that you are installing, you can set that to test, compare it for a full month, see if the numbers match up. Then you can switch to production and decommission the old usage meter. This is from going from 3.6.1, but also it actually applies to the newer versions. Just be aware that if you are pushing data directly to the usage inside, it'll do so every hour. So switching and decommissioning the old one needs to be timed and coordinated. Again, just read the documentation. And even if you're going to do an in-place upgrade, snapshot before the upgrade or migration. So just making sure you can roll back to a consistent state. If you're upgrading to a new appliance, compare configurations again. Make sure you keep the old usage meter for documentation purposes for at least 3 years. You can keep them on a backup. It's not a big appliance or anything. So just make sure you keep it for 3 years because it's a requirement of the program. Again, post-installation for usage meter, and that goes for not just upgrading, but installing new usage meter, check for errors and configuration issues. So yeah, and keep the old ones and the new running in parallel if you're doing migration or an upgrade, if it's not an in-place upgrade. So this is a really, really good link. This is Slack. If you don't know Slack, just get the client and go to the VMware Cloud Provider space on Slack. You can get directly in contact with the product management team. You have a lot of cloud provider customers out there that are also super helpful and will help you answer your questions you may have. So it doesn't require approval or anything. Just get Slack, click on the link, get Slack, go into the channel, and you can post your questions there immediately. So really, really nice resource there. Also, VMware has the Cloud Provider blog with a lot of content for cloud providers. And the stuff that we are covering here is actually also mentioned in a blog article as well on this side. And obviously, for the Danish partners, we have virtualized.dk, which is the resource site locally for Denmark. And we have a question here. Please link how to switch for that. Okay, yes. Otherwise, I'll reach out to you after the presentation for changing to online, from offline to online. All right. Program compliance. So this is the important stuff. So every compliance check here is done by VMware, and the nature of the compliance check is changing a bit since everything is moving toward automated reporting, stuff going into the usage inside portal and stuff like that. That's on VMware premise, right? So they can check things themselves. So if you're being picked for an audit, quarterly audit, and they're performed quarterly and random, possibly there will be some abnormal usage that could trigger a compliance check just to see. Also, new partners going into the program would typically receive an audit check within the first or second quarter, starting with the VCPP program. So don't be alarmed. This is just to check that you are, doing well and stuff like that, but also making sure going forward that you're complying with the rules and terms and conditions of the program. So basically, it's to check that you have usage meter installed, that the things that you're reporting is correct, that you have divided your environment and you're not running, other stuff in there, or, double reporting. I mean, everything. So just, normally it's just the usage files. They will check, does it add up with the things that you have reported on the monthly billing order? That's basically it. And you need to answer a few questions about the usage meter version you're running, stuff like that. Very easy. I mean, I have partners that complete this within 5 minutes. It's not a big deal if you're running according to the terms and conditions of a program. If you get picked for an audit and you're not running usage meter, expect it to take longer than 5 minutes. Just saying. So your responsibilities and compliance steps. So obviously is to be in a supported state. So that means you have to have a supported version of usage meter to be in compliance. Also, the usage meter, if it's producing errors, you'll have to fix that because that is not in compliance. So it could be everything from you may have installed a realize operations instance, then you removed it, but you didn't remove the configuration from usage meter. So it's throwing errors all over the place because it's still looking for an operations components, but it's not there anymore. So just make sure that everything you introduce to in the environment, go to usage meter, check for errors. If you're adding, if you're removing, that's it. So again, logging into the commerce portal for reporting. If you're offline reporting, deliver the report within the 48 hours, and approve for everybody. Approve the usage report no later than the 5th day of every month. So this is also a requirement. Reporting on time. If there's something that needs to be changed, support, that's totally allowed in the program. And Arrow will help you resolve any issues there. And that's a valid reason for not submitting the report, but there still need to be taken actions towards resolving that. So that's also for staying in compliance here. And again, all non-metered products need to be reported manually and screenshot as documentation or whatever is required according to the product usage guide. So make sure to check that for the product that you're using. And again, you need to retain 3 years of data for the monthly usage report. This was more or less, very important in the pre-usage meter 4.x days. So going forward, every report is now being aggregated and pushed into the usage insight. So obviously VMware will have these data there, but still, keep the usage meter. If you're decommissioning it, put it on a backup. Make sure you can provide some kind of evidence, because there's also some raw data stored locally on usage meter. So if there's any challenge to anything, you can just provide the copy of the usage meter and say, okay, here you go. That's my proof. So it's a lot easier than discussing, loosely about something that cannot be proved, right? So just remind that. Yeah, and again, you need to provide evidence for the use. You need to respond. So if they're picking up on a decline of usage, then you say, okay, maybe I lost a customer. If there's an increase in usage, okay, I gained several customers there. That's just answering to normal questions. Report to respond to the email in the first place. That's an excellent way of starting the compliance check. And just ask Arrow if you need any help completing this this check. It's really easy and painless for most parts. Yeah, and again, what I said. So just an important reminder here, and that brings me to the next slide. But don't alter the numbers when you're reporting on the monthly billing report. Don't change the numbers in there. I mean, if you have a valid reason, if you have an agreement with VMware that this is okay to do something, or if there's some circumstances in there, but if the numbers are coming from the usage meter being pushed into the monthly billing order, I mean, I strongly recommend not changing those numbers unless you have the VMware approval. Because if you get picked for an audit, you need to explain why this has been manually approved. And one reason that is definitely not valid is I think it's measuring incorrectly. Therefore, I change it to what I think it should be. Don't do that. I mean, I had partners doing that. This is not a valid reason, and it's a really bad, place to be when you're picked for an audit. So just if you have these kind of concerns, if there's something that is being measured twice, or you are doing a switch from one environment to a new environment and it's counting double, I mean, anything like that, open a support ticket and have VMware approve that this is or check that this is the case, and get a pre-approval on changing the numbers, because then if you get picked for an audit, you can refer to the support case and the approval, and case closed. It's much, much easier. So hope that makes sense. And on the Customer Connect side, you obviously create the support ticket. You can go in and you can choose usage meter and just create the support ticket, and a support agent will be with you to go through whatever concerns you may have with the usage meter. All right. So this is how you do that. So setting yourself up for success. So this is the documentation or the link for important information part here. We have some recommendations on what you should do, especially for those who are possibly using NSX-V. You need to go to a migration phase for NSX-T, since it's going out of general support in January next year. So if you are using V, migrate to T, get in touch with Arrow and we'll help you. Or if you have a direct partner manager at VMware, you can reach out to them and they can help you get started. So there's a dedicated team in the US handling partner migrations from V to T. So this is also a resource that's available if you need help with doing the migration. Again, if you're running 3.6.1, upgrade. That's it. If you're running 4.1, 4.2, in-place upgrade. And don't wait for 4.5. It's easy done, 10 minutes. Remember to snapshot before the in-place upgrade. If you are on Usage Insight on the Cloud Services portal, VMware would also migrate you very soon if you're there. And if you're not using Usage Insight yet, you should go into the Commerce portal, and there should be an invitation for you to go directly and opt in for Usage Insight. So even if you're not using Usage Insight, if you're on a 4 dot whatever version, the 4 version requires Usage Insight. So even if you don't have access to it, it will actually push the data to Usage Insight and then to the Commerce portal. But since you don't have access, you can't see it. So definitely request that invitation so you can go in and check the numbers and do configuration changes on the billing calculations. So a collection of resources here that you need to know. Partner Connect, obviously, there's a lot of information. I recommend searching for stuff, because navigating that site is a real pain and it will steal all your time. So go to the search thing. Also, it requires what you know what you're searching for. Hopefully this webinar has given you some information on the words you should use and the guides that you need to search for. But you can find everything in there related to the program guide, the detection white paper, product usage, stuff like that. You can also check your partnership performance dashboard. So so if you want to have a higher partner level, you can check the dashboard, see what is required for that. I would also recommend checking the dashboard for essentials that need to be completed. There are some program essential things that you need to take in order to just stay a partner in the program. I think most of them have been completed for our partners, but just go in there and just check that you have a green tick in the essentials part of the performance dashboard. Oh, sorry, oh, it's a bit too quick. So Customer Connect, this is formerly known as My VMware. This is where you received all your license for the VCPP program, and it's also where you do the support related to the components you have in the VCPP program. There's also some learning stuff in there. There's also learning stuff in the Partner Connect portal. It'll be a link to Partner University as well, but also in Customer Connect, there'll be a learning portal there to know more about their products. VCPP.CLOUD, this is the URL to remember. It will direct you directly into everything related into the VCPP program. So a lot of good stuff in there. Commerce portal, do the monthly reporting, also where you request licenses or more licenses. So if you need them, just make sure that if you're upgrading your vSphere environment on VCPP, maybe coming from a 6.5 version or something like that, you want to go up to a 7 version, don't go into the Commerce Portal to request new licenses. I mean, unless you're really strapped for licenses, go into the Customer Connect portal, go find your license and do a license upgrade in there, because you already have the license. You just need to upgrade the key, and you can also do split and merge of license keys in the Customer Connect portal. So if you already using 100% maybe of your licenses and you need more licenses, okay, then you can go into the Commerce portal to request one-off order for additional licenses. Lastly, cloud services. So this is an old link because, as I mentioned before, this is being pushed into the Partner Navigator. So Cloud Services portal is where you used to be. This has now been replaced or are being replaced by the Partner Navigator. So everything would be in there going forward. Again, just the VCPP.CLOUD. It looks a little different now. They have changed the menus, but basically everything you can find in there relating to VCPP. So 2 minutes to the top of the hour. Any questions other than what already been written here? Otherwise, I would just pop in a quick poll for you to answer. There we go. So we have a question here. Yes, I said some. So yeah, there's a question where I said something about VCPP being able to extend into the customer on site. So what is the demand or requirements, I guess, for this? So basically, there's no demand or requirement specifically for this. You have to have provided as a managed service, so you cannot be a licensed broker. So if the customer has the environment and they have a full IT department doing all the stuff themselves, you cannot go in with a VCPP license and say, okay, here you go. See you in a year or so. I mean, you have to provide the service. You have to be in control of their service. That's not the same as they cannot have access to the platform, but you need to have like the administrative responsibility for the platform. Also, another requirement is that you install usage meter. So obviously, if you have like a VPN or dark fiber or something like that, you can use your own usage meter instance to hook up to the customer. If you are separated from the customer, you need to install usage meter on the customer's environment and have that report into the usage insight portal. But that's more or less that's the requirement there. So typically we'll see that request if a customer is in between decisions, right? They don't know if they want to move to a hybrid, to a hyperscaler, or if they want to renew services on their existing perpetual license. Then you can help them and bring in your VCPP rental license while they make a decision going forward. That's one case of using that, but hope that answered the question. All right. Other than that, I don't have anything more for you guys today. So thank you so much for joining. And remember that you can always reach out to your local Arrow representative and they can help you in any way. So with that, thank you so much for today and enjoy the rest of your day.